So let's start with a very direct question about Iceland. How is successfully Iceland is recovering from crisis?
Things have indeed stabilized in Iceland and are improving, and the economic figures are improving. We are now enjoying economic growth. The prediction for next year is 2.7% economic growth. Unemployment is about 5%. And we now have a balance in the fiscal budget. The prediction is that we will have a surplus next year. So things are improving, but they are fragile. And we have ahead of us important challenges, such as the capital controls, and also the debt level is very high. So it continues to be fragile and very important challenges ahead.
From what we heard, it was quite a shock for Icelandic economy and for Icelanders themselves. And what do you think, how it affected Icelanders' view towards the European Union, the crisis itself?
Well, initially, immediately after the crisis, support for potential EU membership grew enormously. I think it went up to close to 70%. Then the mood changed quite rapidly because of the crash in the so-called Icesave issue, and the fact that one of the EU member states, namely UK, imposed terrorist legislation on Iceland, and that had a very negative effect on people's attitude to the EU. It sort of spilled over to people's attitude to the European Union. So it had an impact, but then things have stabilized and become more calmer.
Okay. You mentioned that the Icelandic economy is recovering at the moment, and do you think it might also affect the Icelanders' enthusiasm of joining the EU, this recovery?
Well, what I think is playing a big role in people's attitude towards the EU membership question is the fact that the Eurozone debt crisis has continued. And I think one of the main economic arguments for Iceland's membership is the Euro and EMU, and the fact that the Eurozone countries have been dealing with a severe crisis has made people question as to whether our interests would be better served as a part of the EU and adopting the euro. So I think that you see an influence like that. Also, the fact that we've managed to start to crawl out of the crisis has also influenced people's attitude, and they question no doubt whether our interests are better served, since we are doing relatively well. Unemployment is about 5%, and if you compare to that to most of EU countries, that is not bad. But we have severe challenges still, and that is the capital controls, and we are stuck with the capital controls, and this means that our economy is not as open as we'd like it to be. It means that our economy is less competitive. So we are faced with fundamental questions as to how we can abolish the capital controls without destabilizing the economy again. And this is one of the issues we are, and our government is looking very closely into, and there are no simple solutions to that. And the debate on the EU question is evolving, and it is more and more focusing on what options we have with regard to the capital controls and the currency. And to many, the options we have in terms of the currency is to stay outside the EU and stick to the krona, which many argue would mean that we would have to have capital controls permanently in one form or the other, which many argue also would mean that Iceland would be less competitive and not with an open economy as we would like, or to join the EU and eventually adopt the euro, which should make it easier to abolish the capital controls and allow us to be more competitive in the future.
Oh. Was it true that at some point it was a debate in Iceland whether to adopt the euro or adopt the Canadian dollar? Was it? How serious was it?
Well, there are some of the view in Iceland that think we should explore the option of adopting another currency unilaterally, because they perceive the krona, our independent currency, as a problem, and they see the problem also in the context of the capital controls, that we will not be able to abolish the capital controls with the krona. So they think those that argue for a unilateral adoption of another currency also admit that the krona is indeed a problem, and they think that we should explore other possibilities than only the EU question, namely adoption of another currency, possibly the Canadian dollar. There are others that argue, economists and others, and politicians, that consider that not a feasible option, and that a unilateral adoption of another currency is not viable economically nor politically. But this is one part of the debate in Iceland, and it is maturing, I must say.